get back to them. But
yeah,
Danny,
sorry.
did you have a question for the judge candidate here?
Yes. Are you going to adhere to the Constitution?
I would take an oath to adhere to the Constitution and expect to do it
Yes.
with all good conscience.
And I just want to say this. Back home, I have a few friends of mine who are judges. And I went through this circumstance, and it was rather humiliating, and even for the judges. And I want to ask you this. How do you feel about, what do you call, what's it, parte communication?
Ex-parte communication?
Yes. How do you feel about that? I mean, you just mentioned something earlier that you wouldn't make a decision on a question that Mr. Wagener had. But how do you feel about that, ex-parte communications?
Well, what ex-parte communications are communications made to a judge or a member of the judge's staff that are outside the courtroom proceedings that are not recorded and are essentially done in secret, and they're prohibited. So it's not a matter of how I feel about it. The law is that a judge should not entertain ex-parte communication on the subject matter of a case that's pending before him.
Unless both sides are there, right?
Then it's not ex-parte anymore.
Then it's not ex-parte. But I've seen that happen. I've seen one attorney not there, and the other attorney goes and talks to the judge. Okay, this is how we'll deal with it, and they deal with it, and they move on to the next case. I've seen it happen in New York, in Long Island, and I remember the specific courtroom. But anyway, I want to thank you for subjecting yourself to some questions, because this is the only time the public ever gets to.
That's right.
To rub the gritty with a candidate for judge, and I think it's a really important position you're running for. And I thank you for subjecting yourself to my questions, which I gave you no clue in advance, did I?
No, not a clue.
Not a clue. And that's the way I am, because it wouldn't be fair to tell you the questions in advance. It's sort of like the $64,000 question, but they gave them all the answers in advance, yeah. So they knew what was coming. It was a rigged game. This is not a rigged game. You're watching On Second Thought here. We're here with Mr. Beebe, candidate for judge. I think he's stood his ground. I don't agree with him on everything, but that maybe is in his favor. And you might want to consider voting for this man for judge in just a few days before this show re-airs, because this is live on Friday. You get a chance to pick, and I want to say that I made an equal effort to reach the other candidates. McKinnon didn't reply, Cutler didn't reply, and Kevin Reddy didn't reply. I think because they only gave me their office numbers, didn't reach them. I want to thank you for being on the show. Danny, did you have one really quick, short yes or no question you wanted to ask him? You done?
Yes. All I want to say is back home,
yeah,
there's a lot of ex parte communication going on, and how could I bring it to the proper authorities to address this problem?
Well, I think clarification about the ground rules among the judges and some discussion of it in the press would be starting points at least. So good luck with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. Hey, you just reminded me of a question. Ron Branson, I think you've heard his name. He got the thing on the South Dakota ballot to impeach judges called Jail for Judges. JAIL stands for Judicial Accountability Initiative Law, or JAIL for short. And the judges and the attorneys came out together and said, this is a terrible idea to have judges impeached and have them removed for breaking their oath and violating the law. But it went farther than just having them removed. It said you could go after their pension, their house, their personal assets if they break the law. Would you favor having judges subject to having their personal assets, their pension, their salary attached if they break the law, they violate their oath?
Well, I think it depends what we mean when we say they break the law. If they commit criminal acts as any other citizen, I think that's one thing. But I think the JAIL initiative is designed to say that if they make a ruling that somebody disagrees with and it ultimately prevails in showing that it was against the law, that they should forfeit personal assets. And it doesn't seem to me that that's an effective way to run a system of justice.
What you just stated was the way the judges twisted it, and the attorneys in North Carolina came out and said it the way you did, but it actually doesn't. It says you have to go to a super grand jury, a statewide drawn super grand jury, and if they find you guilty after a fair trial, an adversary proceeding of having broken your oath of office, that is itself a crime. breaking your oath of office, because people's lives are in your hands, and they trust you because you took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. And that's why I favored Ron Branson's thing, but he just enlightened me something. Danny, we'll get back to you. I'm not forgetting you. But since Mr. Beebe here is a research analyst at the court, Ron Branson stated to me, I don't know if it's true, that county grand juries cannot investigate and indict judges, that has to go before the California Commission on Judicial Performance. And they can go after anybody else they want, but they can't touch the judiciary. Is that true?
I believe that is the law.
Since 1960, so that is the law. Should we reverse that and allow county grand juries to go after judges? Because aren't we then creating another title of nobility, that even the grand jury is supposed to be the people's last resort to get really criminals, corrupt people in office? But we've taken the judiciary and made them exempt. Shouldn't we make them accountable like everybody else?
Well, we have used the grand jury process actually in this county in the past
to get bad judges?
To
get bad prosecutors like Tom
yes.
Sneddon? Tom Sneddon falsified evidence in the Michael Jackson trial. I was there. I saw him get caught. Remember the phony fingerprints thing? You probably don't want to talk about that because you probably did research on it, but...
I'm not even familiar with that allegation.
Shouldn't DAs... Are they part of the judiciary, so are they exempt from county grand jury investigation?
Well, you have to remember that there is both a criminal and a civil grand jury. The civil grand jury is a watchdog kind of function, which is made up of citizens who, in many instances, have volunteered their time.
Right.
Often have their own agenda. The criminal grand jury looks at actual criminal conduct.
And who makes up that grand jury?
That's actually selected as a pettit jury would be by random draw and then a process of Wagener, so that they sit for a time to hear cases that are brought to them actually though by the district attorney. But if the district attorney were somehow implicated in such a case, then the Attorney General's office presumably would handle whatever indictment process might be involved.
So you don't think that judges should be put back under the county grand jury, criminal or civil jurisdiction?
Well, I think if
you think they should be above accountability?
No, I don't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if a judge should commit a criminal act, that
like Judge Diana Hall, and look how long it took to get rid of her.
Well, but she was subjected to a criminal process.
Well, it did, and I was there at her hearing down in Ventura, and watched her lie again. You know, and she got away with it for a while until someone upstairs in Sacramento said, you know what, Wagener's complaining about her, other people are complaining about her, maybe we better do something. And we got rid of her. And it wasn't a matter that she was a lesbian judge. It was the fact that she was a bad judge.
Well, I think the specific allegations that led to what was ultimately her...
Materially deceitful is what they said she was. Materially deceitful.
In connection with the election disclosure process.
Right. I found Barbara Beck to be guilty of being materially deceitful as well, and yet judges just praise her. And I'm not complaining that she's, you know, allegedly a lesbian judge. I found Barbara Beck, and I watched her in her many courtroom proceedings, to be a terrible judge. Just awful, and yet she's allowed to get her pension.
I have to say my experience was just the opposite. That in the occasions in which I had to observe Judge Beck, I found her exemplary. I
watched her in one case where they went through this thing, said, okay, we're going to sentence him to 1 year, and now we find him guilty, and then, well, that means he's got to do a mandatory year in jail. She said, oh, we don't want that, so I'm going to strike out that, strike all that, and we'll redo this so he doesn't have to do a mandatory. And I said, what? I watched Becca do that. That was about 8, 9 years ago. And I did case after case. I just gave up on Beck. I just thought she's a bad judge. She should be in jail, in my view. But you disagree, and that's okay.
All right, good.
I mean, we're still not complete a Nazi state yet, and we can disagree. I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.